Welcome everyone. Today's Tuesday and we're going to be reading from one of the Psalms. It's Psalm 104. And we have 150 Psalms in the Bible, and they were written over a period of maybe a couple hundred years, maybe even longer. Some may have been written a little before King David. Some could have been written during the reign of King David and King Solomon. This is around the year 1000 BC. Some could have been written, in the next 100 years or 200 years. So we're not quite sure. In those days, the different nations of the world had different gods that they believed in. By then, the Jewish people believed in one God. And a proof of a God's power and majesty was how much he was able to control the universe, the world, and the different parts of the universe. Well, the Jewish people started to say that God created the entire world, that God spoke words and it came to be. And then they had the audacity to say, those other nations out there, they think their gods created the world and the different elements of creation. Poof, they didn't do that. Those gods don't even exist. So this is a psalm that exalts Yahweh and does that by saying all the different ways that God created the universe and all the different ways that God exerts his authority on the different aspects of creation. It's a beautiful, beautiful hymn. There are 7 different parts to it. We're only going to read the first 2. There's a lot of reference to the oceans and to the water that covers the earth. And that ties into the first reading, and it's also going to tie into the gospel today as well. So it's Psalm 104, praise of God the Creator. This was also the psalm that was used on Pentecost about 4 weeks ago. Bless the Lord my soul. Lord my God, you are great indeed. You are clothed with majesty and splendor, robed in light as with a cloak. I'm sure this little leaf is going to be fluttering in front of me, but that's okay. It's all part of creation and nature. Here we go. You spread out the heavens like a tent, setting the beams of your chambers upon the waters. So this is the image that God lives in the heavens. He is a palace up there. He has created the palace. He set the beams on pedestals that are going to be resting on the clouds in heaven, so that God can look down on earth. You spread out the heavens like a tent, setting the beams of your chambers upon the waters. That's the waters in heaven. So the waters, this is the way they thought back then. When God wanted it to rain, he allowed some of the waters up in the heavens to come through the clouds. And like there were holes up there, and that's how it rained. That's what they thought back then. You made the clouds your chariot, traveling on the wings of the wind. You make the winds your messengers, flaming fire your ministers. They're thunderbolts, flaming fire and lightning. You fixed the earth on its foundation. So back then, people thought the world was flat, and there were columns underneath the earth that kept it up. They were the foundations of the world. Well, God was responsible for them. You fixed the earth on its foundation so that it can never be shaken. The deeps covered it like a garment. Above the mountains stood the waters. So this is going back to the first days of creation, where the chaotic water covered all the earth. And there was so much water, it actually went up and it covered the mountain tops. So at your rebuke, they took to flight. This is the waters. So God says, move. And so the waters start moving. What do? At your rebuke, they took flight. At the sound of your thunder, they fled. They rushed up the mountain and down into the valleys. They rushed up other mountains and then down into the valleys, to the place that you had fixed for them, to the ocean. So there's this chaotic water. God says to the oceans, and all of a sudden you get this image of the waters going up the mountains and down into the valleys, up the mountains, down into the valleys. This all goes back to the creation of the universe, where God speaks and things happen. They rushed up the mountains and down the valleys to the place that you had fixed for them. You set a limit they cannot pass. Never again will they cover the earth. So God banished the waters into the ocean, creates the shoreline, and never again will they cross those boundaries that God has created. So God is a creating God. He's the Lord of all gods. He's the Most High God. One of the reasons that phrase came to be used, Most High God, is because the Jews believed that God created even the universe and controls it. So, we will tie into the gospel and come back tomorrow. We're going to be taking a look at St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians.